We are live on YouTube and we will begin tonight's program. Thank you to all for joining us this evening for the League of Women Voters Davis Area's first forum on social justice. I too am Davis. My name is Komal Hawk and I will serve as the moderator for this evening's forum. The title of our event, I too am Davis, has been, the inspiration for that came from I Too, the poem by Langston Hughes. I'll read a short excerpt. They'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America, Langston Hughes. What is the meaning of this poem? I too am America. Langston Hughes begins by declaring that he too can sing America, meaning that he is claiming his right to feel patriotic towards America, even though he is the darker brother who cannot sit at the table and must eat in the kitchen. This poem by Langston Hughes shows how much of America is segregated and does not have a voice in conversation in today's society. Tonight's forum is brought to you, all of you, with support from our League voter education funds and our League membership. We also want to express our appreciation for contribution received from all of you attending tonight and for your continued support of our education programs. If you want to join the League, the Social Justice Committee, or contribute in any way, please email us at info@LWVDavisArea.org or visit our website at LWVDavisArea.org for more information. I'll go over the logistics very quickly. Tonight, we will begin with our keynote speaker and then move into a panel discussion on some previously prepared questions before taking questions from the audience. Unfortunately, we've had a last-minute cancellation from one of our panelists, Adelita Serena, but we hope to have her on another future forum soon. For your audience questions, we ask that you use the chat function button on the bottom of your Zoom screen to submit your questions privately to our host, Bob Fung, who will collect these for our moderator. This year has tested us in unimaginable ways, and yet it has brought us together in a much stronger way. While many of us have had the time to watch racial injustices unfold and learn about the social inequities present in our systems, others who live facing these inequities are still on the front lines. Many have found their voices being amplified not only by their own brothers and sisters, but also allies. The nuances and necessity of needing allies to help this amplification is yet another reason to begin this discourse. This last year did not just shine a light, it shoved onto the center stage the issues of the isms and the phobias: racism, sexism, colorism, xenophobia, transphobia, to name a few. In tonight's program, we do not have the time to delve into all of these very important issues to give them their worthwhile discussions, but we are hoping that today we, the Davis Area League, will bring you a conversation and some education on the racial barriers, structural inequities, and the lack of representation that are present in our community we love so much and work so hard to make inclusive and welcoming. We're also looking forward to our esteemed speakers sharing their unique and diverse experiences and perspectives on this topic. And through their expertise, we hope to shed some light on understanding the impact of racial equity and inclusion on our local community and how working together to find solutions can lead to positive results and provide a healthier space for everyone. Please welcome me, please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker for this evening, Sandy Holman. Sandy is an award-winning author and director of the Culture Co-op. Sandy received her bachelor's in psychology, Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from the University of California at Davis, and her master's in school counseling with a focus on education from California State University, Sacramento. Sandy has served as a consultant to countless organizations representing a variety of disciplines locally and nationally to help meet the needs of diverse and marginalized populations. She has also committed herself to a life of advocacy and holistic change. Her experience as an educator and equity specialist, activist, and change maker have given her a practitioner's insight into the challenges communities and organizations are facing that go well beyond theoretical research. She has also received several awards and acknowledgements for her work, presentations, and books. A few of these include a Lifetime Achievement Award from the City of Davis, the Ida B. Wells Risk Taker Award from the California Association of African American Administrators and Superintendents, the Ubuntu Equality Award from UC Davis, acknowledgement from the Office of Public Engagement, the Calvin Hardy Leadership Award, Writer Digest first place winner in the Children's Young Adult Books category, a congressional recognition for her efforts in the community education awareness, named the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Community Award, and the Women of the Year Award by Congressman John Garamendi. Currently, she is also the director for The Cost of Darkness, an award-winning documentary on racial inequality and the systems in place. I have the great honor of welcoming the Purple Lady herself, Sandy Pullman. Welcome, Sandy.
Well, thank you for having me today. I just want to say thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate you coming here today. It's really critical, as you know, in the year of 2021, that we really start to take a real look at these issues. So I really want to commend Kamal and Mary Jo and the League of Women Voters for doing this very, very important forum. I wanted to start off acknowledging that we recently lost 8 people from the Asian diaspora, brothers and sisters, family members to us all. And that's what we really need to start to do, is see any loss due to violence, hate, isms, whatever the case may be, a family member, because then that will really change how we respond to things. So I'm going to ask everyone to take a deep breath in with me in their honor, a deep breath of reflection, and also just to center yourself today, because I know we are all running. Please take a deep breath in and blow out stress. This time, take another deep breath in, breathing in our ancestors, our elders, those who have recently crossed or who have been murdered, taken from us suddenly. Breathe in their peace and blow out any hate and isms and so forth. I, in their honor on this day, in remembrance of all of those who have given their lives over the centuries, in recent decades, and even on yesterday, had their lives taken from them unjustly, we acknowledge that we work on your behalf, always shall, always will, and never give up. And I read this in honor of you. When we choose to spread our wings, when we choose to fly, our destinies, they interlink. Our strength, it never dies. Through our truth, the pain, any suffering, attacks, our spirits soar defiant. We gather ourselves with resilience and wisdom and conquer nefarious giants. All hate, inequity, oppression, injustice, racism, white supremacy, they have no chance when they encounter us and our common humanity. And I really believe that from the depths of my soul. I want to take a moment to acknowledge Mary Jo as an elder in my tradition. We always honor the ancestors. An ancestor is someone who's moved on already, who sacrificed so that we could be. Mary Jo is an elder. Elders are people who are still living, whom we need to learn much from. Mary Jo, I've known for years, and her heart is full of love and compassion. And as an ally, I want to, on this day, say thank you, Mary Jo, for all you have done, and ask if we have your permission to start.
Yes, thank you.
So I'm going to apologize because I'm going to go rather quickly. And I want to say how honored I am to be with all these glorious, powerful people that are on the panel today. They are truly my heroes and sheroes. I just think life wouldn't be the same here in Davis without them. I want to let you know that the people that I work with, young people like Aditi, Aswaria, some people who are here with me today, Joseph, who are out there trying to make a difference, they need us to stand up and to be brave and to take the chances that we need to do. Why is a forum like this so important? Why is it critical? Because our world is more than at a tipping point. These things have been going on for centuries: oppression, isms, white supremacy, eugenics thinking, chattel slavery and the legacy of it. and the genocide of First Nation people. All of these things directly connect, even though they happened 400 and 500 years ago. They have morphed along the decades into what we're seeing today. And they are manifesting in every institution, every community, every society, and all the things that are happening across the globe are directly connected to these things. I want you to know that in my living, I have discovered, as I get ready to approach 60 years around the sun, the importance of our personal power and us owning that power to go out there and to make a difference and being brave. We don't only need safe spaces, we need brave spaces. Being brave means we're going to talk about the hard topics. Being brave means we're going to be truth, speaking truth in love. Being brave means that you are not going to straddle any political lines and not say what needs to be said. Being brave means you're going to step fully into your unique and magnificent purpose that you have been given to make a difference here. If we don't have these discussions, but more importantly, if we don't act on these discussions, we will be looking at this as our forebears have again and again and again with each generation. And Davis, my beloved community, and I was taught that all of you are my beloved. I had a tremendous mother who was an unconditionally loving individual. She taught me that we are all beloved. I thought everyone was getting the same lesson. I learned very quickly that that was not true. We have to understand that we are a connected humanity, that what happens to me will happen to you, even if it takes a little longer for it to happen to you. As a Davis community member, I remember being called nigger, the N-word, as I was walking, just because I asked the nice woman to be careful because I almost hit her since she ran out in the street. She came up on me and she bellowed the N-word heartily and hopefully, and my heart just split. As strong as I am as a person, as much as my grandfather taught me not to let people calling me out of my name affect me, it did. It affected me in that moment. I remember being in downtown Davis not too long ago, having a truck go by after I just spent a day in a conference with young people who were hurting from the trauma of isms, from the trauma of anti-Blackness, from the trauma of being who they are and not being accepted. And these people went by and they called us monkeys. My husband took off after them because, you know, in downtown Davis, there are a lot of stop signs. It scared me to death because that was unlike my husband to do that. I took after my husband, not sure what I would do if we caught up with these people. And the way my husband runs, I want to let you know, we almost caught up with those people. I was praying as we were going because I didn't know what was going to happen if he stopped him, but I remember that vividly. I remember being stopped by the police here in Davis. I love our first responders. I know they are doing the best they can, but I was stopped for really no reason. And the stress that I had, one of those times that I was stopped was not long after what had happened in Texas, where they had the police tension and they had blown a bomb to get a person who was a suspected, I forgot what he had done, to be honest with you, but there was a lot of stress around policing. And it was one of the most nerve-wracking times of my life. This is all in Davis. Davis is a tremendous community, but we also reflect other communities that are dealing with these kinds of things. I remember in college being steered away from STEM classes because I was African American. I remember applying for a job here and being put under extra scrutiny, where normally they call 2 or 3 references, but this person had called over 7 or 8. And one of my colleagues, because I didn't even give them their names, called me and said, whoever this woman is calling about you getting this job, she's putting herself in legal jeopardy. What she's doing is wrong. I remember these and so many other things, seeing my fellow people of color, people who were different, being profiled and being harassed, being unfairly and disproportionately addressed. I honestly believe with all my heart that every one of us has love and goodness within us. But I also believe we've all been conditioned under the system, and systems of oppression are no different, to see people who look different, who act different, who come from a different place, and to have a tendency not to see them in the best way. I'm going to share my screen with you right now, and I'm going to go rather quickly through some slides because I want to make sure that I stay on top of time. But I want you to understand this. I am indeed your sister in my case. There are people out there who identify differently. We are connected. And not only do we need to have these forums, as I said earlier, we need to have action. You need to understand certain things so you can hit the ground running. We no longer have the right to stay in what I call normal people complacency. And that's where good people are being silent. They are living their comforts, they're living in their bubbles, but they're not thinking about those who are suffering tremendously in our community, in Yolo County, in our country, and the world. This is so important to me, so important that I'm going to be brutally honest with you. And I want you to know there's nothing but love behind it. I want you to know that I have sacrificed my life. People you've seen on this panel have fought for justice and so forth. So we owe our ancestors, and we owe people who have been murdered, who have been killed because of hate, the truth. And so if you're a little uncomfortable today, it's not my intent to make you be so, but we can deal with discomfort because some people aren't breathing today because of hate. That's how important these kinds of issues are. So if you give me just a second, I'm going to share my screen. And I want you to know a few things. I'm just trying to make it bigger. Okay. So again, thank you to the Women's League of Voters. I also want to say to all of you to live bravely and honor each day, because you never know when it can be your last. And I don't just say that in a cliche way. You are supposed to soar into your calling and unite with others to make a difference in this world. Again, just a few quick things. One of the best websites I know for anti-Asian hate is stopaapihate.org. I'm going to be sending a list to Kamal and the organization with many more other resources to share with those of you who have joined tonight. I want you to know that I am connected with you and you are connected with me. We all are connected. My organization focuses on helping young adults and those who engage them to survive and thrive. We promote systemic change, inclusivity, equity, cultural competency, literacy, and equality education for all. This is my family that prepared me for the world. Mom was an unconditional, loving person. She's the one that's third there in the center on the top with the baby in her hand. And that's my father right below her, my grandfather to the left. These people were pivotal in my becoming who I am today. I pay homage to them. I thank them. Dad was very different from mom. He was the one who had to deal with a lot of things. He was darker complexioned than my mother. He saw all kinds of hate. He dealt with all kinds of things. My grandfather saw lynchings and all that. I am their proud granddaughter, daughter, and child. Again, Davis needs these kind of forums. We need to talk more honestly, but more importantly, we need to change our approach and start doing things systemically and working together. What keeps us from working together often is fear of the unknown, fear of people who are different, but we have got to conquer that fear. Fear is an irrational way of thinking. Fear is finding equity in reality to me. Fear is freeing everyone after years of running. Fear is finally expecting a new reality. Fear is fully elevating into another realm, and that's what I'm calling you all to do on this day, along with my colleagues. Fear is facing evil and reeling it in. We're trying to talk about liberation. We need to liberate ourselves from the vestiges of those things that I mentioned earlier: inequity, historical oppression, chattel slavery, genocide. By the way, all other movements, if you really want to understand movements and change, you have to study the journey of First Nation people and chattel slavery. Those were the two first big movements as a result of that chattel slavery and the annihilation and genocide of First Nation people. All other movements to this day owe homage to those groups and what they learned and what they suffered. Our efforts are built upon them. We want to bloom and liberate ourselves into full understanding. We want to understand that problems are guidelines, not stop signs. Just because we're having problems or not getting along, it doesn't mean that we can't work. And as I said, we need to be brave. Brave spaces means that we're willing to have those uncomfortable talks. And no, you're not going to always feel safe or comfortable because we're talking about hot topic issues that we usually ignore. It'll take consciousness. It'll take individual work, equity work, knowledge and overall specialized competency in your chosen discipline, and engagement and evaluating whether or not we're being effective. In fact, I call it 4 zones to come out of the comfort zone. In order to come out of our comfort zones, which many of us are steeped in, especially privileged communities like Davis and Yolo County and various aspects, we got to come out of address the personal zone, the historical zone, the knowledge zone, the planning, implementation, and evaluation zone. Personal zone means, what is your stuff that's holding you back? Who are you? What do you want to do? What's your culture? What's your background? What's your vision for life? What exists beyond just yourself, knowing your history, so you're not afraid to learn about mine. The historical zone means learning in depth about the genocide of First Nation people, chattel slavery. Every movement, like I said, in this country can learn from those 2 movements that were the initial onslaught, since they were at the bottom of caste. We need to understand caste and what that means, that we have a caste system in our world, in our country, in our county, in our city. And usually darker skinned people are on the bottom of that caste, and people of color. White supremacy. Most people like to think of the extremes of that, but I'm more concerned about normal people complacency. But we do need to understand white supremacy and how it operates, how what we see on TV, how when we go to our stores and how we interact with people, how when I step off the curb when you're coming by, as opposed to you if you're a white person. We need to understand eugenics thinking and violence and how it's used to terrorize people. And we're seeing big parts of that today. We also need to understand that systems of oppression, systems of inequity and injustice, isms, racism, it's woven into the very fabric of our society. Even if you're a tremendous community like we are, we have work to do like anyone else. So key components of, we have this paradigm that I want to talk to you about. It's a paradigm for transforming individuals, communities, systems, and beyond. It focuses on colorism, isms, racisms, directed at African Americans and other BIPOC groups. It's part of a larger paradigm for systemic change. We cannot continue to react to crisis and use Band-Aids to cover whatever the latest incident is, whatever the latest shooting is, whatever the latest harm done to people is, whatever the latest inequity is, and then go back to being normal. We are no longer going to go back to being normal. So this system approach is what I am encouraging you to do. That is what we need in Davis. This is what we need in Yolo County, our country, and beyond. It lays the foundation for exploring systemic change. Our documentary, The Cost of Darkness, is a part of this, but it comes with PowerPoints, pre and post facilitation, a guide, a brochure. We have spent over 35 years of work, research, and so forth, creating this paradigm because we want you to hit the ground running and not to make the same mistakes. Part of this is the 4 zones that come out of the comfort zone paper, but all of these things together work to make a difference. The knowledge zone is critical to us being able to make a difference. If we continue to do the same kinds of things without having knowledge of what works and what doesn't work, we're doomed to repeat the same status quo. And that's why the needle has moved a little, but not a whole lot. When it comes to knowledge, we want to have knowledge, awareness, skills, and abilities. And then we want to act on that and evaluate it. We want to learn as much as we can from our elders. Our elders have much to teach us. In fact, I humbly say that I learned more from my elders than any college, any degree program, any graduate degree program. And we need to understand that most of our education anyways is through a Eurocentric lens. We have a very colonial view and lens of teaching, and we need to address that also in our schools. We need to take things from cultural destructiveness to cultural proficiency, but we need to understand you never arrive, that in order to be an accomplice, which is better than being an ally, in my opinion, you need to understand that this goes back and forth depending on the latest event and everything that's happening. And then we need to evaluate whatever we're doing. After we've gone through and created a foundation for change, for making a difference, for learning, doing our homework, coming out prepared to step out there and take action, we need to evaluate whether or not what we're doing is being effective and change up. When you take all of these zones and you add them together, the personal zone, the knowledge zone, the history zone, the evaluation zone, then we bloom and we have more success. Again, this is not easy stuff. In order to liberate our minds and what we've been taught and how we see each other, we have to be honest and real and brave and take things on in such a way that people are transformed and changed. We also need to have 5 necessary conversations. And this is a paper you can actually look up, but it's connecting our past history to the present. No, we're not having a chip on our shoulder. No, this didn't happen 400 or 500 years ago. This is happening up until 2021. I cannot believe the resurgence of white supremacy that we are seeing to the degree that we are in 2021. We need to have conversations about how people are feeling. Your stance on race and racism and hate and oppression. How do you really feel? A lot of well-meaning people are actually perpetuating the very things they're fighting against. And we need to have a conversation and appreciation for disparities which happen outside work, and an empathy about other people's challenges. I'm going to stop sharing here because I know my time is almost coming to a close, but I want to say this to you. If we do not start approaching things systemically and holistically, which takes a lot more work, it's a lot harder to do, a lot of discomfort, a lot of uncomfortable things. We're not going to be able to sit in a room, and I'm not going to be able to tell you that you're going to be comfortable every second of the day. I'm not comfortable as an African-American woman almost every day of my life, just because of the work that I've chosen. You are going to be uncomfortable, beloved. And I say that with sincerity, but it will be a discomfort that leads toward some substantial change. I want everyone to go through this paradigm that I'm recommending to you, that is based on people. I was privileged to have Jan be a part of it, and so many other people from across the country who've been doing this work for years and who are understanding that each generation is starting over. They're starting over, making the same mistakes, and we don't have time to do that. So I want to encourage you to think holistically. What does that mean for you on an everyday level? On an everyday basis? Do your homework. Everyone should read the book Caste. Everyone should read the book White Fragility. Everyone should read the book Stamped from the Beginning. Everyone should read the book Why We Resist, and many others. And I will be sending those to Kamal and the organization. All of you, each and every day, you need to understand, a lot of you don't have to walk outside and worry about being stopped by the police, or go into a store and not be able to find products that you can't find, or worry about your safety because right now things are so heightened and they're targeting people of color and people who are different in the queer community and so forth. A lot of you don't have to think about those things. You take them for granted. You need to use your privilege. You need to use your privilege. And I would say to all of you who are out there, all of us have some level of it living in Davis, but all of you need to use your privilege to go out there, spread that massive love, practice massive self-care. I call it the MSc degree, massive self-care, so you can get down in your discipline, in your gifting, and be a part of a mosaic that works together to really lay the foundation for systemic change. No more Band-Aid things. Candlelight vigils are beautiful, but if it stops there, not enough. Marches are incredible and powerful as we're seeing, but if it stops there, it's not enough. And in order for you to do that, you've got to come out of your comfort zone. So I just want to, I hope I'm okay, Kamal, on time. I wanted to take a couple questions. If anyone had any questions, they told me to leave a couple minutes at my keynote, but I want to say this to you. I love you enough to be honest with you. Things are not good. And beloved, we are going to be seeing much more violence. Trust me. It's an intuitive thing that I know. I have not been surprised by anything that we have seen, and it will get worse if we don't take a collective accountability. I am your adopted family member. You are my adopted family member. Love, and not the fluffy kind, but love of truth, love to power, love to coming together and getting real, that your privilege needs to be shared locally like a portfolio, in the country and in the world. You should be doing something in each of those places, and then breathe to take a breath. And so I'm happy to be here today. I'm sorry I went through that rather quickly. You're welcome to email me with any questions you have, except if you're going to send me something hateful, no thank you. I get enough of it. All right, I'll take any questions on that point at this point, if anyone has any questions.
Sandy, I think a lot of the audience wants to know if they can maybe have your PowerPoint in a PDF form where it's completely encrypted and copyrighted by you, but just to have some kind of resources.
Sure, absolutely. I have to figure out how to do that, but I'm happy to do
I'll work with you on that.
And I'm sorry. I mean, the main thing I want them to know is that we have to approach these things systemically, that things have morphed from the past to the present. They're directly connected. And you have to come out of, to come out of your comfort zone, got to deal with your individual garbage, got to deal with history and knowledge, and then evaluate how you're living, how you're being, and reach out and make a difference, because people are hurting out there. I consider you all my family, and I'll end by saying I love you all. And thank you for joining this group today. I'm so proud to be with Vigis, and I'm proud to be with our Mayor Partita and Jan Murray Garcia. I'm just so proud to be with them all, because this is a powerful sorority of people up here.
Sandy, one other thing, attendee would like to know if it's okay to post the fear slide, which I also loved, changing that meaning and giving it a new positive meaning, to their Instagram. They really, really love that slide. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine. I would just ask them to put the culture co-op, because it's part of a paradigm that we're doing. Absolutely. They can share anything they'd like to share. And I'm happy to share that.
Definitely. I really loved even the point you made about being an accomplice and not just an ally. And that's the first time I've kind of heard that word being used. And I really, really like that a lot. I think it gives a little bit of empowerment to that person instead of just being a companion in this journey with someone. So
yes. And what I love about being an accomplice, that means you are in it with me. It's almost as much as if it happened to you, which is the attitude that we need to have. So I'm mourning today the loss of 8 people being shot, whatever the circumstances are, just as much as if it was someone from my own direct community. That's how collective love and thinking and humanity works.
When there's a question from another attendee, when you refer to a systems approach, does that mean language too? Do you mean language?
Yes, that means in every level, from the micro to the macro, because what people don't understand is all this conditioning that we've been, all of us, including myself, have been brainwashed. The media teaches us to appreciate fair skin over darker skin, and criminalize whole communities and people of color, Latinx, the Muslim community, and so forth. Our language, our educational system, that's what that documentary covers, by the way. We look at economics, education, the media, healthcare, the environment, white supremacy, and I'm missing one, politics. And all of those things, you clearly see after you watch that documentary, how this has been integrated into our very ways of being. So as a Black child, I grew up watching the Brady Bunch, the Partridge Family, all these shows that didn't have a Black person in them for the most part, and never questioned it until my grandfather got a hold of me. And then my TV watching changed. I didn't question it. Most of us don't. I'm working with my interns right now, and I'm making them learn about their culture. I actually have quite a few interns from the Asian diaspora, and they don't know anything about their culture and who they are. And that is ridiculous. After going through an educational system, you can get a PhD and not learn about another person's culture. And so that's when we start to give it a different acronym, PhD, powered higher, and I won't say the rest, if we are doing just a colonial education. And that's not the way it should be. That's something that my grandfather would have said. He would have said, y'all, I'll tell you what a PhD stands for if you ain't teaching about all people. So, and he was a big proponent of education. So go out and get those PhDs, but make them more pluralistic.
Mm-hmm. And any other opportunities to watch the documentary?
Yes, on May the 2nd, we'll be showing the first 4 parts again. And then May the 12th, the second 4 parts. And I'll send you, Kamal, I'll send you a link. I really want people to come to this. Now, that documentary is designed to have pre and post facilitation. Usually we watch a segment or 2 a week, give people a little homework, a segment or 2 a week. So it goes over to 6 to 8 weeks, but it lays a deep foundation and a mind share of at least 30%. So people's policy making, their interventions, they're going out to do the work they're going to do, is more informed and not coming from a Band-Aid, oh, crisis, we don't really know what to do, so we're just going to do this, and then nothing changes. So it's that that documentary process with ongoing inclusivity workshops and so forth that are customized for different institutions is what makes things impactful, much more than what we're seeing today.
Absolutely. For everyone who is watching, when I upload the recorded video to YouTube, underneath the video itself, I will include all of this information. That way it's accessible and not just restricted to the people who signed up via Eventbrite. So that way everyone who has access to YouTube can have access to this information. Thank you, Sandy. That was really, really illuminating. And I would like to now move on to the second half of our program. And before that, I would love to introduce our panelists. I will go in alphabetical order. And I also want to make a note that before we started this event tonight, I asked each of the panelists for their pronouns and how they would like to be addressed. And I feel like little things like that are really important to give people representation and to give them credit for all of their accomplishments. So I will begin again. I'm sorry for kind of reading this off the page, but I do want to give credit where credit is due. I would like to welcome Mayor Gloria Partida, who is a longtime Davis resident and was elected to the Davis City Council in June 2018. Mayor Partida attended college at the University of California, Davis, where she majored in zoology and is a retired neurobiologist from UCD. She has a long history of advocacy in the Davis community, starting with disability advocacy and participation in many school and community organization boards, and is a founder of the Davis Phoenix Coalition, which promotes community inclusion. She has served on the city's Human Relations Commission. In addition to managing a small business with her son, who has a disability, Mayor Partida is active in raising her grandson. Thank you for your participation tonight, Mayor. And our next panelist is Dr. Jan Murray Garcia. Dr. Murray Garcia is a pediatrician and associate health sciences clinical professor at the Betty Irene Moore School of Nursing at UC Davis. She also serves as the director for social justice and immersive learning for the UC Davis Health System. During her time at UCD, Dr. Murray Garcia has developed several programs around health equity and anti-racism issues, including interprofessional Central Valley Road Trip, the Summer Institute on Race and Health, and the Anti-Racism and Cultural Humility ARC training program for short for nurse leaders. The ARC training program is currently equipping UC Davis Health System's nurse leaders and faculty to achieve anti-racism and equity goals in both patient care and their nursing workforce. She received her Bachelor of Arts in Human Biology with honors and with distinction from Stanford University, her medical degree from UC San Francisco, and completed pediatric residency training at Oakland Children's Hospital, followed by a master's in public health from UC Berkeley. She has also co-founded and is writing a textbook on the concept of cultural humility, which she distinguishes with her partner from cultural competence. She is widely published in health sciences literature and remains in love with her husband of nearly 29 years, Professor Jorge A. Garcia, who is UC Davis's new Associate Dean for Diverse and Inclusive Learning Communities. The other loves of her life include their 2 adult children. She is also the Citizen of the Year Award recipient for 2020 for the City of Davis. Welcome tonight, Dr. Murray Garcia.
Thank you.
And our next panelist, Vigdis Asmunsen, was born and raised in Davis, California, to a Filipina mother and Davis-born father. Vigdis has spent her entire professional career in education. She worked for 19 years as a K-12 teacher and for the last 2 years with the Science Assessment Office at the California Department of Education. In this role, she works with school districts and county offices of education across California to better support all students. In her prior capacity as a K-12 teacher, Vigdis worked in schools in a wide range of communities, including locally here in Davis, at a Title I school in Fairfield, and in a native village in rural Alaska. In addition, she conducted research with English learners in the Philippines and taught in South Korea. She served in community health education with the Peace Corps in Togo, West Africa, and later as the chair of liberal arts during the founding year of the Abarso School in Somaliland. She is currently pursuing her PhD in educational policy at UC Davis and has a master's in education. She serves as a trustee on the Davis School Board. Welcome tonight, Vigdis. Victus, should I address you as Dr. Asmunsen, or did you not
I'm
yet?
not doctor yet, no.
Okay. I know you said you submitted your final, but I was like,
First quarter. I'll get there.
Great. I want to welcome everyone, and we at the League really appreciate your time and commitment to this very important topic. I would like to start off the panel questions. The first question, and feel free, anyone can raise their hand or take the lead and answer, is going to be, what past challenges did you or your family face in a predominantly white community, and what challenges remain? If you wanted to start, Mayor Pertita.
Sure, I can start. And also, Sandy, I'd like to thank you for always acknowledging our ancestors and for making sure that, you know, that is spoken. I think that is so important. And in that vein, I want to acknowledge that the land that we are holding this gathering on was, for hundreds of years belonged to the Patwin and Winton people that were here. And as I said, I know that you acknowledged our ancestors and the people that came before us. I just want to make sure that we are connected to the land beneath our feet.
Yes.
So,
thank you.
I just want to wanted to make sure we said that. So the challenges of growing up in a community that was predominantly white, I think that I saw that experience mostly through my children. I grew up in a community that was predominantly Latinx in Los Angeles, and before that in Houston. And so I can say that that through them, it was, it was really interesting because there were so many opportunities here. And, when I came here from the place that I came from, I felt like we were safer, and we had, it was a nicer environment, and it is a great place for children to grow up. But there were some things that we did miss from being in an environment where we were predominantly Latinx. And the biggest thing is that we were all in the same boat. So we all understood the challenges of being people of color. We understood the challenges of being poor. We understood we could, talk with them amongst ourselves. And that community was something that my kids really missed, because here they were they didn't have they didn't have that, like, right out their door, the ability to be able to talk to somebody and have them understand what it was like to be poor in Davis, and what it was like to be different in Davis. And I think that they weren't even consciously aware of that. It's like really something that you that becomes a part of you, and you don't even realize that it's a part of you. And it's almost like a gaslighting, where you are, you're made to believe that everything is okay here, and there's no prejudice, and there's, no, if you're not doing well, it's because you're not trying hard enough, or you're being oversensitive, or, all of these things. And that's a lot, it's a lot more complicated. I think that, when my daughter went away to college, she did say that that she felt like she could navigate the world a little better, because she had already spent all the years navigating the differences here in Davis. And Whereas when I came to Davis from where I was at, it was a real culture. It was a real culture shock for me. So I'll leave it there.
Vigdis, would you like to shed some light on the same question?
Yeah, thank you. So I guess I want to start by just acknowledging, how diverse the Asian experience is, the Asian Pacific Islander experience is, being Japanese or Chinese or Indian or Samoan, or there's so much difference there. I consider myself Filipino. As you mentioned in my introduction, my mother was born and raised in the Philippines, but my father is from Davis. My sisters and I, we jokingly call ourselves Halo Halo, which is this sort of shaved ice Filipino milkshake sort of drink that literally translates to mix mix. So when I first thought about this question, my experience growing up in a predominantly white, also affluent community, my initial recollection is just being very proud of being Filipino. My mother is so proudly Filipina. I knew that people said things to my parents, but I had a lot of protection from that, similar to what Mayor Partida is saying. But I also know, and I've heard from my friends growing up in Davis, that wasn't the case for everyone. Hassan Minhaj has said famously that he was told that he looked like poop when he was growing up in Davis. I remember being in Mr. Ross's World Civ class when I was in high school, and Prop 187 had just passed, which denied undocumented immigrants access to public education. And horrible things were said by some of the students in the class. And I remember it because Mr. Ross threw those students out of the classroom, which I think was actually more shocking that somebody was speaking up and saying something about it than that it seemed very normal, actually, that these boys, they did not feel bad about saying these very horrible things publicly. I also know that my mom my parents really made the best of things. My mom was often mistaken for being the nanny. She's clearly a very accomplished person and deserved her access, but the truth is that she gained more acceptance in Davis from marrying a white man than she did from getting a PhD in chemistry in her third language. My dad was told that he would never be electable again if he married my mom. And the way that we actually found that out was that a gentleman at my dad's funeral came up and told us the story in sort of like haha, let me tell you this funny remembrance that I have about your dad. And I think that my sisters and my reaction was sort of to laugh because it's our job to sort of be polite, So I think that kind of brings me to how important it is to assimilate for protection, because it's the polite thing to do. If I can make sort of a generalization about Asians and immigrants, it's that we don't want to rock the boat, that we want to be this hardworking generation, and we don't want to be rude, So I think it falls on us to make people feel okay about their racism in some ways. A friend once casually told me that Filipinos are the lowest kind of Asians.
Yeah.
Not to be mean, just as a fact. And I don't think I said anything because, I want to be polite. And then lastly, I think I want to say that, from a teacher's perspective, I think that things actually have gotten worse over the last 4 years. I didn't hear some of these really openly horrible things being said in classrooms 5 or 10 years ago. I think having a leader who really normalized racist insults made kids and adults think it's more acceptable. And I think that the shooting in Atlanta, I think the fatal attack in Oakland last week are some of that normalization of, dehumanizing language. And it's a pretty slippery slope.
Thank you, Vigdis, for sharing your personal experiences. And I wanted to move on to Dr. Murray Garcia and ask you the same questions about the challenges you or your family face living in a predominantly white community, and what challenges still remain.
First of all, let me say thank you to the League of Women Voters for inviting me to this distinguished panel. It's awesome to be here with such mighty, accomplished women. I want to go back to something Mayor Partida said about gaslighting and how sometimes it seems, I like to say we're living on different planets, but the centered conversation is how great this planet of Davis is. And so you always find yourself second guessing yourself about what your kids are facing or what you're facing. So I just want to say that before we came to Davis in 1999, it already had a reputation for this kind of gaslighting, that it was on the one hand Disneyland for families, and on the other hand a very tough place, especially for Black families and other marginalized groups to be. And so I think one of the take-home lessons is what do you know about Davis? What do you know about what it's like to not be you in Davis? It has an incredible reputation, in some ways deserved, and in some ways it's, I want to say, as much as I love my adopted hometown of Davis, it's the most racist place I've ever lived. I've never been followed in a store before I moved to Davis, and that's happened to me 3 times that I know of, right? When I first came here, I couldn't get seated in this one restaurant. I could tell you that story. I could tell you stories for a long time. Then stopped by the police, lights blaring, Sandy, and I remember taking my daughter, who was 2, almost 3, to the library. And for us, that was a big deal. Education and reading is a big deal. We went to the library where we were living in Vallejo, and it was a celebration. And the librarian was like, "Are you ready for this?" And my daughter's, just here it was, when I asked to have my daughter have a library card, a woman looked up real briefly at her and said, "Well, she has to be able to sign her name." And then it's like, you got to be kidding me. We got dressed up for this. This is what we get. This is what you give a child. And if it was more stuff than that, but I just want folks to know we live on different planets, even as we walk on the streets of Davis. Just less than 5 years ago, my daughter would talk about being a teenager, a young adult at night, and in Davis with her friends, and having cars go by with young people and calling out the N-word. And so this is, 2015, 2014. So if you don't know that, get that. If you haven't seen Hassan's Minhaj's Netflix show, Homecoming King, it really shocked a lot of people who were living the same lives, right? Who were going to the same classrooms, and yet, and Hassan was somebody who's not going to tell you, like Vignes is saying, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I came on the public scene when there started to be a series of hate crimes, and I had already worked with Eladrian Mack and the late Tansy Thomas to kind of reinvigorate Blacks for Effective Community Action. And then within a year, this happened. Before that, we were looking into educational inequities by race in the school system, which were considerable and nothing different than other school districts have. In fact, there were a lot of school districts that were doing a lot better with their kids and with their faculty than Davis was. But then this rash of hate crimes in early 2003, late 2002, if you really do the research, happened that were perpetrated by Davis young people. And that process was incredible for me to walk through as a leader mentored by elders, hearing people say, well, what's a hate crime anyway? Are you trying to be the thought police? Feeling actually quite unsafe, because thinking, wow, if this is the conversation we're having at our breakfast tables when nobody else is around, and kids are still pushing to see how far they can go, that makes this a very dangerous place for me, who's out at night going to community meetings and school board meetings, try to make the place a better place. From that came just an amazing time of working with Davis young people, training them to do research on race and racism, along with a nonprofit that Jonathan London and Nancy Erbstein founded called Youth in Focus. And that was just as intense as that time was. And there's a movie called From the Community to the Classroom, which is available free on YouTube if you want to kind of experience the thickness and the unsettledness of that time. As soon as I got involved with the schools, I got involved with the police. Ironically, as a pediatrician, watching the police treat kids differently by race and understanding those statistics, which, by the way, are still with us. Not so much for kids. There's some great things happening for young people here in the city in terms of juvenile justice. But at that time, I just remember seeing things I'd never seen before, like people coming on campus, taking photos of some kids and not others for gang research files. And, you know, a young Black man who was being arrested by the police, the police officer waited until lunchtime so he could take him diagonally across the campus in front of his peers, not convicted of anything. So, and I agree with the other folks, I would say it started actually with Barack Obama's presidency, just the boldness, the permission, the resentment. We have not prepared our nation for the demographic change that everyone saw coming. Mm-hmm. And we're living with that now in deadly ways, in terrifying ways, in ways that make white people unsafe. So we can keep going, or we can lean into this head on. Let me just stop. I'll stop there with that question.
Thank you. You know, like you were saying, this is the most racism I've felt in my life moving here as well. And it was very nuanced, but slowly grew a little bit. So it's interesting to see. And I moved to Davis in 2014, so I was about 26. So in 26 years, I guess I've been very lucky to live in places, or maybe I wasn't as aware when I was younger. So that's another part of this kind of the coin of racism, is like you don't really realize until you're older what someone's language or their actions might mean. And Jan, you, Dr. Murray Garcia, you actually gave us a segue into the next question about how race and culture played a role in getting your activism started. And I would love to hear from Sandy first this time, and to see how race really played a role in getting you where you are today with your work.
Race played a huge role. My dad was in the military, so we came over here. I was in the 3rd grade when we moved to Bill Air Force Base, and then about the 5th grade when we moved to Sacramento, and came back and forth between various parts of Northern California. But definitely, my first welcome was being surrounded on horses by a bunch of white girls calling me and my sister the N-word and other things. It was very intimidating, very jarring. I was in about the 5th grade, and it just changed. It really cemented some things that I had even experienced in Japan, where I used to be called Big Eye. You know, one thing about all of this stuff is it affects everyone, even those who are being targeted. We internalize it. They call it internalized oppression. And we often are more likely to hurt each other before we hurt the perpetrators of it. And then I have a very clear thing at 18, being at a KKK rally. I lose my mind sometimes. I'm working on this, and I ran right in the middle of a KKK rally right here in Sacramento. Some of the people were from Yolo County, and I started pulling off masks and screaming as my girlfriends were frantically calling the police, thinking I was going to be harmed. So race and culture has definitely impacted how I see my world. I've seen many youngsters hurt, like Dr. Jan Murray Garcia was saying, just, you know, in our community, even in Davis. And it's, you know, we're no different than other communities. I mean, some communities dress up better, they seem nicer, and ours certainly has some great things about it. Especially, I'm excited with Mayor Partita and others who are out there doing, you know, amazing things with their activist history and legacy. But we are no different. We have all internalized this stuff. We've all been affected, and it affects every aspect of our lives without us even thinking about it. So that's how, to keep it short, yes, that's how it's affected me, and the work that I've been doing now for most of my adult life is I feel the pain, I see the pain. I tend to be an empathic person. So when someone dies or someone is hurt, a part of the blessing of what I do is it allows me to have compassion for people. But part of the negative part of it is I feel their pain. It's like it's happened to me. So these people in Atlanta, that's happened to my family. So it's affected me. It has a cost to doing this kind of work, to being who I am, I think, for most people.
Mm-hmm. And you're practicing self-love and self-care.
Massively. I have no choice. I have a body that requires it. I mean, there's certain things out of my control. I have some significant health issues, but there, you know, who knows, I was exposed to something or whatever, but I wouldn't be here today. And I mean that literally, if I wasn't practicing massive self-care. And I want to encourage people to do that, because this stuff is hardy. It has its toll. And I mean, all people, including white people too. This has been a tough notion to be dealing with in our world today.
Yes. And people should not feel any guilt about practicing such self-care.
No, stay in your lane. In fact, I want to encourage you, you can't be at every rally. You can't be at everything, you know, stay in your lane and become a part of a mosaic. Maybe your thing is education, someone else's economics, someone else's healthcare, someone else's politics, like we have represented right here. So you partner with people across the board and you stay in your lane, but you work as a mosaic toward a systemic change in a chosen area. Otherwise you will burn out. You cannot, and then turn the TV off. You can't take this in every day. It will literally slaughter you. It will slaughter your insides. You know, look at the diet that we're getting on our news. So absolutely. Take care of yourselves. Otherwise, you don't have a chance to make a change.
Very true. Thank you, Sandy. Gloria, I will ask you the same question about how race and culture played a role in how you got involved with the community. And I would like to bring that a little further and say that now that you are the only female on our city council and the only person of color, how do you see that representation? How has that affected the community, or any positives or negatives in that role too?
Sure. So I think that as I was thinking about this and listening to Sandy talk about it, you know, I don't think that my activism started in racism, in addressing racism, but certainly certainly I was informed about that activism just by being a person of color. So I grew up in Houston, and you know, I was born in 1962, and so this is way past the time where, you know, people had to ride in the back of the bus. You know, not that much later, but still, you know, it. And I have this very clear memory of like getting on the bus with my mom and sitting down in the front seat of the bus. And she like yanked me by my arm, put her head down, and like walked to the back of the bus as quickly as she could. And wow. I think it was like the first time that I realized, because I asked her, I said, you know, why can't we sit at the front of the bus? I want to sit at the front of the bus. And she like would not answer. And I knew something was wrong. It's like, you know, like when you're a little kid and you know, like you need to be quiet. And much later, when I went back to visit my great grandmother with my uncles, we walked into a restaurant and sat there. And my uncle said, they're not going to serve us. And we had to, you know, we got up and we left. And when I talk about like the gaslighting, it's just like, you just accept that. And as Victor said, these, things happen to you and you just shrug it off and go, well, they're jerks, or, that's just how the world is. And, you just, I think that I'm a very optimistic person. So I'm always looking for, well, there's 100 good people to the, 25 bad people or whatever. But I didn't think a whole lot about it until I was a teenager, and I started my activism around the injustices that were in my community, because we were a very poor community and we were very underserved. And what I felt more was the poverty, was the oppression of the poverty.
Mhm.
And as I went further down in my journey, I realized that that was connected to race, that, that there was a system that made sure that people of color were kept poor and out of power. And that was put into place like a long time before. And power rises. I always say power rises. Like, you don't want to give up that power. You want to make sure that you keep it. And I don't think that we do that, or that, as a society, we do that intentionally or consciously, but it's in our being to not want to be at the bottom. And so I think that when Sandy talks about knowledge and making sure that you have that knowledge, that is something that you have to be aware of. You have to be aware of the, types of biological beings that we are, right? So I tend to look at everything through biology, because I was a biology major. And so as I'm trying to understand the world, I think about, well, how can we change this? How can we, change, all the isms out there? And I think that you do have to understand the history, and you do have to understand the what makes us tick as people. So I sort of moved from, or I didn't move. I don't consider it like moving from, one activism to another. I think that they're all interconnected. So I did a lot of activism around disability rights, because I have a son who's disabled. And again, it's about vulnerable people. It's about people who are vulnerable. And all of those things are connected. If you are vulnerable, you're on the margins, you're not going to be invited in. My son wasn't invited in to a lot of spaces. My kids weren't invited into a lot of spaces. And all of that is it just really keeps people of color out of places of power, out of places where they can be successful. And so I feel very fortunate to be the mayor of Davis. I feel, extremely, I feel like, I won the lottery. And I have to say that for all of the, talk of how this is, you do feel the racism here. If I have to believe that is not 100% true, or I wouldn't have won, right? I mean, there have to be enough people that looked past their own prejudices, and saw me as a leader, and saw me as a person that belonged in that space. And so I am grateful for that. But I also feel that I did a lot of work for that. I worked in my community for a long time and in a lot of spaces. And I think that, again, that's another thing that that I don't know that somebody else would have had to work as hard as I did, right? I don't know that somebody else would have needed to work for 30 years before they were recognized as a leader in their community.
Thank you for your hard work and persevering through it. Thank you. I also wanted you to kind of touch upon, as you know, as many of us know, that you are now on YouTube as an ad for Healthy Davis Together. And we had talked earlier, and I wanted people of Davis to see that representation there's a cause and then there's an effect. And I would like you to talk about kind of the Latinx community.
Yeah.
I think that'd be great. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm really glad that I was able to make those promotions for Healthy Davis Together. It was the strangest thing in the world. They, asked me to come and do this. And they said, bring your makeup bag and your comb so that you can freshen up. And I said, I don't have either. I don't,
Yeah.
And so it was a little surreal to do it. But I was really pleased to be able to do those advertisements in Spanish. Spanish was my first language. I'm a little rusty now, but I'm very, proud of the fact that I can speak it. And I think on Facebook, I posted one day, I'm feeling a lot better about all those times that people assumed that I couldn't speak English, because it was, because that happened a lot, actually, so we have these once a month meetings with the Healthy Davis Together folks, and they go over all the statistics. And one of the statistics that I was just so pleased about was that we are testing a higher percentage of Latinx people than there are in Davis, and it's like the first time that the Latinx community has been overrepresented in a statistic for something positive.
Wow, that
and I don't know if that's because of my speaking Spanish, but I will take it.
It's because of you.
Yes, absolutely.
You.
I think that's wonderful. I was really pleased when you said that in one of our meetings, and I was like, Davis community needs to know this because there is a direct correlation to this. Vigdis, I'm going to ask you the same question about how, race and culture has played a role. And obviously you've had your mom's influence and you were an educator for so many years and you've probably seen so much on the ground. So I would love for you to talk about that.
Thanks. Yeah. So I want to start with the assets and just, say that Filipino culture is very much, it takes a village. We, as many, I think, Black and brown cultures are, families all work together. Everybody is an auntie, everybody's a cousin, regardless of, who's related to you and who's not related to you. My sisters and I are all really deeply involved in our nieces and nephews' lives. We have that responsibility for each other and for our community. Beyond race and culture, I think there is that intersectionality with being female. There, and I'm starting to realize, I think, that there is an access and a knowledge that I take for granted that maybe not everybody realizes. And realizing how much that representation matters. One of the things that I did when I was teaching in Fairfield was I ran a district science fair, and we would invite scientists to come and speak. And at the end, the students would turn in these comment cards. And one of the things that they always said was, oh, I was surprised at how many of the scientists were women, which is, frustrating that that's something that's surprising. But it was something that every year I heard multiple students say something about. It's definitely played a role in my career choices over the years. As you mentioned in my introduction, I have chosen to do a lot of work in other countries. And along with that, I think does come that issue of doing development work and potentially underestimating the work that people are already doing in those countries as people that live there. And there was a point where, somebody said, you don't have to go to another country to be helping people. There's so much that you can be doing right here. So then, I spent about the last 10 years teaching in Fairfield at a Title I school. And I want to be really honest about, the growth that I did at that point, growing up in Davis, growing up in an affluent, primarily white community prior to that, and not being exposed to diversity previously, having this idea of what is right and what is high status. I would be in parent-teacher conferences, and parents would tell me about how they were so nervous about their Black boys getting bigger and older. And you would think, what white parents get to just be proud and excited of their children getting bigger and older. But they were worried about how they were going to be seen. I look at my little blonde first grade nephew, who is a very wiggly little kid, and I see how much support he's gotten in the classroom and scaffolding from his parents. And I know that statistically, if he was a Black or brown kid, those wiggles would not necessarily be supported in the same way, and that they are disciplined even in first and second grade. So, in my first years teaching at Fairfield, there was so much that I had to learn. I thought that holding them to these higher standards, policing their hair, policing the way that they were speaking, was holding them to a higher standard. I thought I was teaching them how to code switch. I thought that I was helping them, do
you explain code switching for people who don't understand it really quickly? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So being able to, present or act or speak in a certain way in some places, and then knowing that there's other places, like, the way that we would talk about it, I guess, with kids is on the playground, maybe you're going to talk to your kids, to your friends in a certain way. And in the classroom, maybe you're going to say different things, or you're going to use different language. But there's also that, obviously across cultures, you might speak in a different way to your family members, or you might speak in different ways in different locations. So, I had to get to the point where I had to realize, am I trying to discipline these students because of the way they're asking this question? Because it's not the way that I want them to be following my rules and asking this question? Or am I able to see them engaging with their education and asking for help, even though it's not the way that I have been raised to believe is the right way to be asking that question, or the high status way to be asking that question? And it took a lot of training, and it took a lot of self-reflection. But, being a teacher, we believe in growth mindset. And I just want to really acknowledge the growth that I personally had to also do, that we all have to do in that self-reflection piece. In terms of like my activism, it's interesting because I see myself as a teacher. I identify as a teacher. I don't see myself as an activist or as a person of color, but I'm starting to realize and recognize, because of the wonderful things that people have said to me and the support that I have gotten, the importance of being a person of color in a public position. And education is about empowering people. So, if my work and my presence can do that, then I am just beyond honored to have that responsibility.
Thank you, Victus. Because of our time, I'm going to kind of go through a couple of questions, and if you want from the audience, and if you want to keep these answers short, that would be great, but still kind of be comprehensive in your answers. This one question is about resources in our city. As a mother of 5 biracial children, now all adults, I would have welcomed some special group or activities for them. What is available for children of color now, or just resources for communities of color now? Anyone can take this. Just raise your hand if you feel like you have an answer.
So I'm really pleased to know, I don't know what was going on like when my kids were growing up, but definitely there was nowhere for them to connect. And I'm really pleased to know that there is the parents of African-American children that gets together and meets. I know that like the Korean church, and there is like a Chinese school for kids, and they meet together. I think that the communities are looking for each other and coalescing, and I think that is a great thing. At Marguerite Montgomery, they used to have this room that was staffed, I think, by Empower YOLO, and the moms that were not English speaking moms would gather together, and they would support each other and how to support their kids. And unfortunately, that has been closed, and I'm trying to figure out how to get that back at Marguerite Montgomery. But but yes, there are I think more opportunities for people of color and their children to get together. I know that there's a Black Student Union at junior highs and the high schools, and I'll let other people chime in here.
There's also Friday Night Live programs. They do a lot of programming for young people throughout the county. You can actually even call 211 and they'll share programming that's available. UC Davis campus has a lot of things that they do for young people. They have the various groups that are focusing on various cultural constituencies and offering things all the time. And of course, you know, in the spirit of familyhood, the Greater Yolo County has other things coming on. I think there's conferences for almost every ethnic group that's available at some time. I know the Black Youth Leadership Conference, they're doing it virtually out of YCOE this year. Also, I know they had the Latinx conference, I think through Rahulio. He could tell you what the date is for that. So there's all these different kinds of things. And I don't know, Jan, are we missing anything?
I think one thing I would, go ahead, Gloria, you were going to say.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the Davis Phoenix Coalition holds, we hold a group, a support group for the LGBT youth.
Thank you.
And also for parents of LGBT children.
Yeah, I just wanted to I think, Sandy, you did a great job. And I just want to say that I just want to talk to white parents, because it shouldn't always be on parents of color to make this a comfortable community to grow up in. I think kids have to see one another. You know, ask the school board, ask the superintendent how many Black teachers there are. I don't think there've ever been more than 5 or 6 in a group of 500 teachers. Okay, that's not going to get us very far. I want to say that this is the most, folks, as much as I love you and I love Davis, it is the most conservative group of Democrats I have ever lived with. And I, at some level, I just can't help but think that what comes with the euphemisms of good schools, safe streets, farmers markets, also the inaction of white people calling out the fact that Black folks are 5 times as likely to be arrested as white folks in this community. 5.9 if you don't live here. I know that was an issue. Oh, it must be other people being arrested. No, 5 times as likely. Tonight, write a letter to your city council members. Why is that happening? What are we doing? Why are Black folks getting searched more often and you're finding less on them? That's a national trend, right?
Yeah.
Why aren't we moving on ethnic studies? It's just glacially slow. There's race and social justice for U.S. high school, for 11th graders, amazing class at Davis High, somewhat dependent on the teacher you get and you choosing that choice, you choosing that. The state has mandated that there be ethnic studies, a required ethnic studies class before graduation. Tonight, before the weekends, email the school board. Where are we? Are we diluting ethnic studies from what it really was advocated to be, which is a focus on Asian Americans, Black African Americans, Native folks, and Latinx folks? Can we handle that if those folks are centered in this class when no one said anything about my children reading Mark Twain, reading Tom Sawyer, reading, can we accelerate that? Can you ask the school board, where are we? Can you ask the superintendent, where are we? When will that happen? And then I just want to say too, for white parents, if you don't teach your kids, they're going to learn on our kids. If you don't get your kids some books about hair texture and skin color, guess who they're going to ask those questions from and use their tactile senses on. It's painful to have to put your children back together after these kind of violations. And I know we just think we're more liberal and more progressive than we are. And there's a great book, a 28-day kind of workbook called Me and White Supremacy. I would not have named it that, but it's a really great book by Layla Said. And it takes you through just how whiteness shows up, not in the Klan member, not in the January 6th patriotic insurrectionist, but in regular folk and Davis folk. It's an important book. It's an important book. And I just want to ask yourself why there have only ever been 2.5% Black folks in Davis. That's not an accident. The way you are silent about police conduct, school conduct with kids of color, with people of color, means that's going to continue. It makes us think that's what folks want. When people drive through this city and get stopped, that gives you a reputation. Before I came here, it was a reputation as the Mississippi of the West. Davis, California. I know you don't believe that. And you ask me why I'm here, and I just say I'm an American too. I mean, I already don't go to Idaho and South Dakota. I don't go to, what's the park in Montana? I can't do it. I can't do it. But can I live in Davis? Is that okay?
So Jan, I think that was great. And I always tell people, your kids don't learn through osmosis. Your values and wherever you got to in being a, woke person, it was a journey. If you're a white person, it was a journey. You had to learn that. And I think that oftentimes people, they think their kids are going to just absorb the values that they have because you have them, and because you don't use you try to be a good person, but that's not how it works. You have to. It's this whole concept of being anti-racist. You have to actively educate your children. You have to actively have, these conversations. Education is like the biggest, way that we can change the world. When I looked at that insurrection in Washington, I thought, where are our civics lessons? Like, how did we let go of democracy? How did we lose that hold on understanding that our democratic process was so valuable and so important? And I just think that we have to keep teaching our kids. I took my grandson to see Jojo Rabbit, and there was this scene where the Gestapo comes in and starts going through the whole house, and he said, "What? Hold on. What about the 14th Amendment?" And I was like, "Oh, honey, I'm going to go thank your history teacher." And so I just think we have to keep teaching our kids. We have to keep letting our kids know what our values are, what we believe in, and explaining to them why it's important.
And the adults have to start first. I'll just say quickly, we talk about democracy. We need to understand that from the very beginning, the way this has been structured, it's been more of an ideal than a practice. And that's where that knowledge comes in, that knowledge zone I was talking about. Jan is right on point. It's about unpacking, dismantling, all of this stuff. And I think until people dive in and really visit the past, as opposed to try to bury it and say, let's just go forward and forget about it. No, you can't do that. There's no real unity until you go back to the past, make amends for the past, talk about the past and how it's still affecting today, and turning that light on. Like I'm holding this little light up, and I'm seeing the light coming from all my fellow panelists, but also just from the voices of history, our ancestors who are screaming to us, give us justice, give us truth, revisit, do this for real this time. And so Jan is right on point, and it can't be done on the backs of people of color. It needs to be done really from those white privilege spaces, but also the acknowledgement that this stuff goes deep, 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 deep. So we could have 1,000 programs for people of color, for example, which was a very important question. But if we're not dismantling those core foundational things, nothing is going to change. In fact, we're going to constantly be flirting with going back, depending on who's the latest person elected. And when you consider that right now, there are over 250 bills to voter suppress for the next election in over 43 states, 250, they've started right after this election. We need to get our things together and be ready to act. That's what I want to say. So I really appreciate Jan bringing that to the forefront.
I just wanted to say one more thing. You know, we are telling these parents to educate their children, but I also want to make sure that we kind of hold our community accountable, because some of these parents might not have, they're the ones doing all the work. They are people of color. They want to teach their kids. Like Dr. Murray Garcia said, like, yes, white parents, it does fall on you, but also it falls on our white community and our color, people of communities of color, to really make sure there's representation in school boards and teachers and city government. And sometimes these parents are working 2 jobs or doing so many, taking care of intergenerational elders, and they might not have the time to teach their children. So there is some responsibility, in my humble opinion, that rests upon us as a community. Absolutely. To hire from within and show that representation and show our the next generations that yes, we'll put these people in places of influence and power. So
to the League of Women Voters, since you guys are all about politics, until we deal with gerrymandering, until we deal with public support for candidates, so it's just not rich peoples who can run, until we deal with corporations being dealt with as a person, until we deal with the popular vote versus the electoral vote, all those kinds of issues. It's not just about registering people to vote. It's dealing with that, and particularly the gerrymandering, because that's why we don't have any representation on school boards, in political places, because even if everyone came out to vote, we've gerrymandered things so much that their votes aren't being counted. So these are those core issues in that knowledge building we need to have. So we're attacking the real beast and not just the surface. But you're exactly right on.
Yeah. Thank you. I know we're a little bit over time, so I'll do a quick closing. I just wanted to remind everyone tonight that the City of Davis is planning to update their general plan and its community vision. And conversations like these are really, really important to have inclusion and diversity, not just inviting people to the table, but also listening to what they have to say and taking their experiences, even if they don't have a high status resume list. Maybe their personal anecdotal experiences are more than enough to give them a seat at that table. And then we hope with tonight's program that you would like to be included and work with us on our Social Justice Committee. We have just formed this committee recently, and there's only 2 of us on it right now, and we'd love more people on it. Just go to our website. You can find information on there. It's lwvdavisarea.org, or you can send me an email at komal, KOMALH, @lwvdavisarea.org. I want to thank everyone for joining in, and I want to especially thank all of the panelists and our keynote speaker, because you all have taken out so much time in your busy schedules, and we really appreciate the information and education you're providing to our community. And as women of color, really showing that you can do everything and you can be a role model for all of the citizens and the next generation that is looking up to you. So with that, I would like to say this is recorded. It will be on YouTube tomorrow because I do need to get some sleep. And thank you all sincerely so much.
Thank
And I
you
would
all.
love to do
Thank
this
you
with
so much. It's such an honor. Thank you.
Seriously. Blessed. Thank you. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
everyone.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, you guys.
Bye.
Blessings and love.
Yes, all around.
You as well.
Get
Everyone
tested. Get vaccinated.
Good job, Kamal.
Excellent.
Wow, you did great.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Kamal, Mary Jo, and Jan, and
And
Vigis, and I think Gloria's already gone, but thank you all for
really appreciate
providing this for the community. I hope it has an impact and helps you along the way.
Thank you.
It was such an honor to speak with you guys. I loved listening. That was just the coolest.
Yeah, same. I've learned so much. Thank you.
Likewise, right back at you.
Let's do something together. Let's all do something together.